his hands were trembling, and I said, you know what? I said, I believe you.
Yeah.
Because a week before that, I had picked up a girl at about 5 o'clock in the morning, a nurse at a home for elderly people. And the very top floor of the building had, this girl up there waving at me. She had long dark hair, and she was wearing a gown. She was waving at me from the top floor. Well, the woman got in the back of my cab, and I said, who's that girl up there? And she said, honey, there's nobody up there. That floor has been sealed off for 50 years.
And yet you could clearly see somebody waving at you there.
Yeah.
Yet on the Spine Road, it is a vicious and spiteful young girl called Liz Foggen. During World War II, she was moved out into the countryside as a child to live with a family in Bedlington, having been evacuated from Leeds. Tragically, her father was killed on the beaches of Dunkirk, and a year later her mother died of pneumonia. So young Liz had no place to call her home. So on reaching 16, she ran away from the Elliot family who had been housing her there in Bedlington. She worked at a number of pubs and hotels over the next half dozen years. And then one night in the early 1950s, she was walking back to her shared room in East Sleekburn after working in East Hartford. She was tired. It was a filthy, wet night as she plodded through the wind and rain. It was pitch black in early November, and a lorry driver heading south, also weary after a long day's work, failed to see her and clipped her with his wing mirror. He pulled the wagon to the roadside, stepped down to find the young lass lying on the verge with blood running down her brow. He got some water from his cab, washed it off, and as he did so, Liz regained consciousness and started screaming at him, abusing him, and promising to see him sacked and prosecuted. The poor driver took it all and tried to apologize, offering her a lift home. Reluctantly, she accepted, as it was still a good 20-minute walk for her and the rain was torrential. Once in that lorry, she just went off on one and got so angry that despite him traveling at about 40 miles an hour, she opened the door and leapt out. Once again, the driver emergency stopped and reversed to try and find her. Yet as he did reverse back, he felt a bump. He'd driven over her head, crushing it flat. In pure blind terror, he got a couple of sacks out of the back, dragging the body into them before hoisting it into the back. A huge pool of blood was slowly being washed away by the monsoon-like rain. The body was thought to be dumped down an old well near Shank House. The well at that time was being capped and filled with stone and road waste as they built a nearby housing estate. The driver spent almost 2 hours in the rain shoveling soil and stone on top of her body down that long hole. She's still thought to be there, as the top of the well was later paved over. The dead girl has since proven not to be too happy about her demise and has preyed on motorists on the Spine Road ever since. In some cases, she flags down cars and wagons, seeking a lift, usually on wet, dreary nights. Often as a car pulls up, she will disappear, terrifying them. On other occasions, she's been known to get into the back seat as the driver stares at the soaking girl with the vivid electric blue eyes in the rear view mirror, only to see a trickle of blood running down her face. Sometimes she then disappears. On other occasions, she's even slapped the back of the driver's head or screamed, causing at least a dozen cars to crash. One motorist called Duncan Dalglish from Eyemouth reported this on his insurance form after he drove off the road into a tree. He didn't win his claim, but he swore that is what had happened. In 1971, Mary Dobson from Ashington was travelling home on a horrible rainy night and picked up a young girl dripping wet from the Spine Road. They talked for 10 minutes, with the girl sitting in the front seat. The next 60 seconds almost cost Mary her life. She told local reporter Colin Greaves, "I thought I was doing what anyone would do, and yet the girl was being foul-mouthed and unpleasant. She said her name was Liz and she just wanted to get home. So I was taking her as quickly as I could. Then after talking quietly, she suddenly screamed. Then I looked over at her face, and it was just one mess of blood. You couldn't even make out her eyes or nose. It was just blood. I screamed and just yanked at the steering wheel. The car rolled over about 3 times, and I woke up at the hospital in Ashington. Over 100 sightings a year on average, even today. It is so well known a tale that no one gets picked up along the Spine Road anymore. If it's a rainy night, some locals choose to take a different route, just in case, because Liz sometimes manages to get into their cars without them even having to stop. They're happily driving along, and then out of the corner of their eye, they see something moving in the backseat of their car or lorry. At first, it just looks as if it's something black that gradually transforms into a soaked and bloody Liz, ready to assault the back of their head. As recently as August 2010, Richard Hall was driving down the Spine Road towards Newcastle with his stretch limousine with 4 girls celebrating a birthday. They were being loud and playing music, but Richard heard genuine panic and looked into the back, and right at the very back of his stretch, there was a 5th girl bleeding from the head. By the time he stopped and walked around, the girls were all crying and shaking in fear because that girl had disappeared in front of them. If you're driving, wherever you're driving, you're told regularly to check in your mirrors. Unless you're on the Spine Road.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
And now, on today's program.
A man of science.
He's unique, wouldn't you say?
He's healthy and normal and full of fun.
You're the man.
All of your tests indicate that you have the most advanced intellect in the history of humankind.
Cody's Saturday Surgery. Medic! This doc rocks.
And just a second before we do that, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 emails already from people who have seen figures on the Spine Road. I'll just pick you one at random. Let me just click one. That one will do. From Beck, who says, my friend seen somebody on that road. Then when they looked in the mirror, they were gone. So spooky. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Unless, of course, you're passing trade. You don't know the vicinity.